Hey everybody, thanks so much for coming out here today. We are at COP26 here in Glasgow, Scotland. This is probably the first time I think that we've had such a significant presence from the National Caucus of Environmental Legislators, which is a group of 1,100, maybe 1,200 now, Republicans and Democrats from all 50 states around the United States. And my name's Chris Lee. I'm a state senator from Hawaii, and with me,
I am Dominique Jackson. I'm a state representative from Colorado. Yay.
And one of the things we really want to highlight today and just chat about is the kinds of impacts that this whole conference is about, but through the lens of justice and equity and what it means, especially for underserved or indigenous communities and other populations who, I think, in the spirit of environmentalism going back decades, are now seeing, I think, a lot more focus and a lot more attention. And what's that, I mean, for you, let's just dive right into this. Colorado is a place where I think for me, I always thought of as pretty homogenous, but come to find out it's not. So really, what does that make up there? And what does that look like?
What do you mean that it's not homogenous, and what is the makeup?
Well, there's a lot of actually diversity in a lot of different communities within Colorado, and there's these issues that apply in different ways to them, and it's stuff that clearly has come up from time to time that you've been working on.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, so Colorado is a very diverse state. I mean, the state as a whole, you've got the eastern part of the state, which is very different than the western part of the state, north and south. It's a square. And the issues in every part of the state as it relates to the environment are just very, very different. You've got your urban and your suburban, you've got your frontier, and you've got your mountain communities. And in my district in and of itself, which is an urban district, I'm in Aurora, which is my district itself is on the Denver border. Very diverse ethnically, socioeconomically. There's more than 130 languages spoken in my public school district alone. As it relates to the environment, between the Aurora and Denver, there's a refinery that's a big issue. There is some historical redlining. There's a highway that has cut some neighborhoods in half, and a project that is being done along that highway that people have been up in arms about for, I don't know, gosh, well over a decade. That's going on right now. And the environmental impacts of that project have been a very, very, very big deal. So there's a lot going on.
So when we talk about these sorts of projects, and obviously I think a lot of the probably public pushback to some of these things, and Colorado, I think now is known for being one of the more progressive states on climate issues throughout the United States. How, I guess, do those lessons really apply? And really, are things different now than they were, being treated differently than they were in the past? And is there more of a justice and equity angle to the kinds of policies that you guys are pushing and actually dealing with to resolve these issues?
Well, I think there is now. I mean, just last session, myself and some of my colleagues, one of my colleagues is here at COP26, Senator Faith Winter, passed a bill that was really two bills that ended up sort of going into one bill that was our first Environmental Justice for All Act, which will apply to several state agencies and does a gazillion different things related to environmental justice. And I won't get into the details of it, but essentially what it is it gives community voice and power. It puts community in the driver's seat to decide what a disproportionately impacted community is, which is a difficult thing to do. We can talk about that. And so decide for themselves what a disproportionately impacted community is and looks like. And that's a really important thing to be able to measure, because then that community will be able to utilize fines and fees that polluters have to pay to mitigate the harmful impacts that happen in their community and get to decide how to utilize those monies. So it's a big deal.
So I mean, I think about this in the context of what we're doing in Hawaii, and I think we haven't taken a comprehensive approach. What you guys are doing is actually really impressive because you're trying to create sort of a blanket effort to try and address this, no matter what form it takes, no matter what the policies or issues are that arise. And we've had very specific, targeted, narrow issues that have come up. For example, we have refineries that have been spewing out, toxins and mercury into the air in some communities for decades. And in other communities, in order to address that and provide some justice to those communities for all those decades of health impacts and everything else they're facing, we're building windmills in other places.
Oh yeah,
clean.
it's such a big, that happens all over the place.
Exactly, yeah. And so now we have other communities that are complaining because they're hosting, while they're cleaner, better projects, cheaper projects, it's still something that they have to put in their backyard. And so you're pitting community against community in some ways.
Exactly. That was happening in Colorado too. I mean, it's like, sure, that's what happens. It's just like, these polluters will be like, oh, hey, yeah, we'll do whatever we need to do to, we'll pay our fine, or we'll send electric. We literally had a situation. It's sort of like, I believe that we had a situation where I was told we had a situation where, some electric lawnmowers were given away, as part of a settlement, and it's like the electric lawnmowers went to some people that didn't need the electric lawnmowers, and the people who were harmed didn't even have lawns.
So, this is exactly it. And so one of the things that I think, we're thinking about today is like, how do you provide some sort of, not just compensation after the fact, but how do you provide some community incentive? And actually right here in the UK, there's some great examples where you had communities that were coal communities. I mean, the whole economy in the town was based on coal. And over the course of a decade, sometimes less in some of these places, that completely fell apart and shut down as the industry transitioned. And you had instead wind manufacturing for like turbine blades and all these things come in and completely change the economy. But part of that was placing those turbines in places where they're going to provide power to those communities. And what was done here, which is different than I think I've seen in the United States, at least up until recently, those communities were given the first right to buy into those projects, to benefit from that financing as stakeholders.
So I think the lesson here, and I think that the thing that we all need to take away from the legislation that's happening in Colorado, from what you're describing that in the UK, is that the real power should rest within community, within local community. And I think that's a change. Now, Senator, you have been an elected official much longer than I've been an elected official. And I think in some of the conversations we had, like on the trains and the things that we've been doing before we sat down in these two seats, was you were describing to me the changes that you've seen over time. So would it be accurate to state that you have seen a change, a shift in the trend that in policy that is now more community oriented, that we are seeing it's from the people, it's from a bottom up?
Yeah, I don't think I've heard it put quite so succinctly. And that's perfect, because I think, in the past, a good example, 10 years ago, maybe a little bit longer, as solar panels and things on people's houses and roofs really started to take off, not just around the country, but certainly in Hawaii, where we have a ton of sun, all of that benefit was basically by wealthier individuals, wealthier families in communities that could definitely afford to make those investments, and they benefited from that. And our grid became saturated with solar, and pretty soon communities who were disadvantaged and less well off couldn't invest in those, even if they wanted to, because now you're having too much solar in one particular spot on the grid. So we learned from that lesson. And now, as we're seeing batteries be deployed, and as we're seeing electric vehicles come online, we're intentionally changing the way that we're laying out our programs and our investments so that those communities, regardless of wealth, status, anything else, all have equal opportunity to invest, and there's going to be space reserved for everybody. So,
and this is the thing that is just, for me, this is the power of the movement. This is the power of what's happening here at COP26. all those people that are outside of this space that we're in today, all of those people who are raising their voices, talking about climate action and what you're describing right now. The senator and I think we're both in the same space. I call us conduits, right? We're just the vessel in which this work gets done. You know, the work gets done through all of you. You know, the work gets done through the people. And for me, the policy that I have worked on has been very community oriented. I mean, it's all community. It is like literally my phone, my email, people coming to my office and saying, look, my kid's sick. I'm tired of my kid being sick. I'm tired of walking out to my car and having yellow goo on my window. I'm tired of my kid having to shelter in place. I'm tired of, you know, whatever the case may, whatever the thing may be, you know, working in the factory and X happening. You know, I'm tired of finding out that my water quality is X. I'm tired of not knowing of, you know, the fence monitoring, you know, driving by it every day and not believing in it, not knowing what it's saying, you know, just whatever the case may be. And years and years and years and years, I'm tired of not having voice. I'm tired of the fact that, you know, all of the negotiating and the rulemaking that's going on is a bunch of lawyers in a dark room and I don't have voice. You know, I have no idea how to get myself to the table and I need help. And that's what it is. And so, what I say, and so it's like, okay, guys, so let's figure this out. Let's figure out how you can have voice. And so in this last legislation, I mean, there is, you know, I'll get into it a little bit. There is a task force and there is a board, and these are community members, including we have the Ute, Mountain Ute, and Southern Ute tribes as well in Colorado. Indigenous communities, these are the communities and DI communities, disproportionately impacted communities, that are going to have voice, who are going to decide what's going to happen in their own communities. And so at any rate, speaking up, you know, works.
Yeah, and I think, you know, right now, as we sit here on this stage, outside
Yes.
the convention halls and outside the
Yes.
perimeter here, there are tens of thousands of people
Yes.
assembling, calling for greater action, not just on climate and environment and doing all the things that need to be done, but also greater action, recognizing that individual communities, people, families, regardless of status, regardless of where they are, all have a right to be a part of that. And those voices deserve to be heard, especially when for decades they've been ignored. And I think that's something that regardless of outcomes, people clamor for, they really want, because they want to be a part of the solution. And it's on, I think, us as leaders, not just you and me, but
Of course,
us
all of us.
collectively, to make that possible and build those pathways and that structure.
I guess that's what I mean. It's like, it is all of us. We are all in this together. We all have a role to play, I guess. And, you know, the senator and I's role is what it is. And your role is what it is. And we all have the same, we all have collective power. We all have a collective voice, right? That's what I mean.
And I think that's the lesson coming out of COP26 this year, more than anything else. You know, we're not going to change the world tomorrow, but we can change it for a lot of people by getting them an opportunity and an understanding that their voice can make a difference and it will be heard. And there's an opportunity for them to participate no matter who they are and where they live.
And I think the other lesson is too, is that change does happen. Change is happening. We are making change.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Because I'm going to tell you, I think that change is going to happen for the lives of those people who get to sit there and not have everything happen in that dark little brown room with all those lawyers. They get a seat at the table.
Absolutely. And that's the lesson going forward, I think. And it might be a good time to transition, because there's a lot of negotiations and a lot of great things coming up here for the rest of the day here in Glasgow. So with that, any last words on this idea that we are seeing change from not just policies being implemented to address climate and other things, but rather policies that empower people to be involved in that process?
Any last words? Well, I would simply say for all of you, just keep learning, keep growing, keep talking, keep having conversations. You don't have to be here. You in your home, with your neighbors, with your kids, with your colleagues. Just keep talking, keep learning. Every conversation I have, I learn something new. And you're gonna have an impact.
Yeah, and I'll just say thank you, because none of this stuff that we've talked about today would have ever happened had people not stepped up and spoken out. And that is, I think, the lesson for all of us, that everyone's got a voice, make it heard. So thanks very much. It's been awesome being here, and we'll see you at the end of the conference.
And I want to thank again the National Conference of Environmental Legislators. Thank you so much for having us here as well. I have learned so much from you as well. So thank you very much.
Take care, everybody.